6,800, that's the number of anti-Semitic incidents recorded in Canada last year. This according to Brith's annual audit. That's the equivalent of around 18 incidents on average each day. Incidents included violence, harassment, vandalism, including the beating of a visibly Jewish man in Montreal caught on video. Now, despite those numbers across Canada, Brith says cases fell last year in Quebec. Let's go behind the numbers here. Paola Samuel joins us, Quebec and Atlantic Regional Director for Brith Canada. Paola, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Elias. Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you here. Now, why don't I start off with this? This number, 6,800. I mentioned off the top, there's harassment, there's violence, vandalism, but what does that number represent to you?
So the number is reported and recorded. In other words, it includes it includes police reports from several dozen police stations from across the country. But it also includes online, and it also includes the comments online and the incitement of hate and the incitement of violence. And so it might not be a criminal act, but it is an act of anti-Semitism.
And the majority here of the online variety, would that be fair to say?
The majority is online, correct. But let's be very clear. That means that there is incitement to get people to physically harm or otherwise Jewish population in their areas.
And as you mentioned, reported and recorded. Is
Correct.
there a worry that the true nature of this problem is far worse than what gets recorded and reported?
Well, we know that Jews are known to underreport to police stations. And I think there is definitely this concern because people are tired. The Jewish community is tired. And there's points where they're saying, because as you know, Elias, what we've seen on the streets of Montreal is many in the Jewish community feel that we have not been well supported by the police. And when the police do act in a way that is the right thing to do, arrest certain people. For example, the man that you spoke about in your intro who was beaten in front of his little girls, that's generational trauma that we're creating. Or the Heil Hitler barista, both of those charges were dropped.
They were
once
dropped.
They got to
both.
Yeah.
I knew about the second
Heil
cup,
Hitler,
right?
And maybe I'm wrong about the man who was beaten, but it's certainly, or maybe it's being looked at differently. But the point is that the repercussions are not equivalent to what the violent acts are, or the anti-Semitic acts are.
What do the police say to you? Because to be honest, I know there's a couple of stories that we talked about earlier on the show that are not related to hate crimes. Like, generally speaking, we're lax on crime. Like, if you're a violent offender, you usually have a rap sheet. You've done this many times. Even things like fraud, financial fraud, you're being released, people reoffend. So I just wonder if this is just more, that's just how we treat all types of crime in the country. We don't take it seriously.
So I would suggest to you that if any other minority group was attacked the way the Jewish community has been attacked since October 7th, there would be repercussions, and there would be outrage if there was not repercussions. That is not the case with what is going on with the Jewish community. So yes, I agree with you that there are, once it gets to the prosecutor stage, there's a lot of things that are being dropped. I don't know, it is that they don't have the budget to prosecute, et cetera, but there would be public outrage to back any other minority that was going through this, that we're just not seeing. And that adds to the banalization of anti-Semitism. People are just seeing it, and so many people don't even recognize anti-Semitism when it's right in front of them anymore. That's how common it's become.
Yeah, and so listen, I want to take a look at one very interesting part of these numbers, and of course, things exploded after. Pardon that, or the use of that words, but things increased a lot after October 7th, 2023. Okay.
Yeah.
The numbers went up significantly. I'm looking at the Quebec numbers, and I was interested in this, like the year over year, 2024 to 2025. Quebec saw a decrease, 65% decrease. Ontario, same time period, year over year, was up by 80%.
Right.
What's going on? What's happening?
So I think part of it was, and I think it is It is a mistake for us to look at 2024 as the standard for Quebec. We should be looking at 2022 before October 7th. By that measurement, Quebec is still way off the charts. What happened in 2024 in Quebec was we had the McGill encampment that we know lasted longer than any other encampment in the country, and there was so many demonstrations that incited violence, where you heard horrible things like kill the Jews and gas the Jews on a regular basis, that the numbers where were the numbers going to go? But a little bit down, you know? I think the right way to compare this is what does it look like compared to 2022 when it was before October 7th. And I'll tell you something else that's really interesting is after those horrible Bondi attacks, Bondi Beach attacks in Australia. During Hanukkah, where Jews who were just going to a Hanukkah festival were gunned down. Rather than the community rallying around us, anti-Semitism went up. And that is something to be very worried about. These are not Canadian values. And that happened in Quebec as well. A little girl is gunned down with other members of the Australian Jewish Society, and people turn on us, rather than saying this is unacceptable. And then CSIS came out very shortly after saying we need to be very careful because this could also happen in Canada. And so those are the contexts that we should be looking at, rather than did the numbers go a little down between 2024 and 2025 in Quebec. They're still at unacceptable numbers. I mean, any of it is unacceptable. But they are so high that the fact that they come down, we're still off the chart.
You have your annual audit. The Senate, actually, Canada's Senate released a report, okay, a 73-page report recently. I know the federal government has thrown lots of money at security, okay, across the country for places of worship, okay? And
you're talking about the $10 million?
The $10 million, and there was more money before that, actually, right? And I just wonder if you think we are going to report and write up reports and also throw money at this problem with more cameras and more security guards. Is that going to be our way out of this problem?
So I just want to take. I want to go to the $10 million that was donated, that was given to the community by the Canadian government. As grateful as we are for that, it is, think about it's not just places of worship, it's community centers, it's places where Jews gather, that if you break that down across the country, coast to coast, it doesn't even, it's not even a raindrop in a puddle. It is so small. Most of what you were talking about in terms of security guards, et cetera, is coming from the funds raised from the Jewish community. We pay well over our weight in terms of the population that we are, in terms of securing our schools, our community centers, our places of worship, for security guards, for cameras, just to be safe. And that's unacceptable in Canada, that we can't even gather we have to hide where we have just any kind of happy gathering. You no longer get an address if you sign up for an event, you don't get the address right away because we can't put the address out. It has to be only when people are checked, people who have decided to come to the event, they're checked out and then they get the address. That's what it's come down to for the Jewish community in this province and in this country.
Let me ask you this. You were mentioning before, in the wake of some serious things that have happened worldwide, whereas the attack on Bondi Beach, other events, where you have not seen a rallying of support, okay? And as we do this interview, I get a text message from a listener, and then they say, well, what about the children in Gaza, okay? And I know I've heard 2 years of this where I get this refrain, and I wonder how you respond to that. I have my response. I've said it on air many, many times. But what's your response to that as a way that people justify what your community's gone through over the last couple of years?
Well, my response is very clear. First of all, whataboutism does not have a place in our society. To say the Jews are being attacked on the streets of Canada, well, what about the kids in Gaza? I don't understand what one has to do with the other. What's going on in Gaza is, and I will say, what about the kids in Israel too, who are being bombed every single day from Hamas, from Iran, etc. But that is a foreign conflict in the Middle East. We're talking about numbers of Canadian Jews. We are citizens of this country. We are citizens of this province. And there are people who are Jewish people and families who are choosing to move to Israel because they feel safer under bombs than they feel in the streets of our country. That is serious. We've gotten to a point where we're on a national crisis of anti-Semitism. So for the response to be, what about the kids in Gaza? Well, what about the kids in Ukraine? What about the kids in Russia? Are we seeing Russians being attacked on the streets or Ukrainians being attacked on Canadian streets? No. And so it's a ridiculous comparison.
Paola, I have to leave it there. I want to thank you for coming on and talking to our listeners. Thanks so much.
Life, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for having us on.
Paola Samuel there, Quebec and Atlantic Canada Regional Director for B'nai Brith Canada.
iHeartRadio is throwing it back.
2010s, the decade.
To the days of huge hits and unforgettable anthems. A non-stop stream of the biggest and best.
Drake, Rihanna, Beyonce, Katy, Gaga, The Weeknd,
and more. All your decade-defining favorites, all in one place.
Hi, it's Katy Perry.
Hey, it's Bruno Mars.
This is Kesha.
Find 2010's The Decade on the free iHeartRadio app. Preset the station so it's always one tap away.